Hello. So yeah, sorry about that. What all you guys were hearing was the screen reader that we have set up on the laptop. Um, we're going to be playing with that a little bit, hopefully not revealing any of my passwords, but we'll see. So just to start out, my name is Nicholas Zakis. I'm the principal front-end engineer on the Yahoo homepage. So my job is really about code quality, and so I care about things like performance and maintainability, and also accessibility. And I do a lot of technical writing, both online and books, always out there talking about best practices. And so today we wanted to talk about accessibility. And when I use a computer, I use it the way that most of you probably use it, which is with a keyboard and with a mouse and looking at the screen. And this is my colleague, Victor.
Hi, my name is Victor, and I'm a lead for the Yahoo accessibility team. I care about a lot of things. Some of those things are in the Yahoo homepage, but actually I care to make sure that all of the Yahoo websites, all of the Yahoo content is created with accessibility and best practices in mind. As to how I use the computer, you can imagine I can't see, therefore I don't use a mouse, I just use a keyboard and this weird software that you just heard called Screen Reader. What it allows me to do, it allows me to hear what's on the screen. And then I would be using the keyboard to interact with the page. In this instance, it would be with a website or an application. And I also lead the Yahoo Accessibility Lab, which we're going to talk about a little bit later.
So this is going to be a little bit different probably than most of the talks that you've been at, in that we don't actually have any slides to show you. So what we're going to do is kind of talk you through the sort of things that we've been through, and then take you through a demo of the homepage and show you the accessibility features that we have built into it. Because I think that will really be a lot more interesting than having a bunch of bullet points. So unfortunately, that means that my bad memory isn't being helped by anything. And so that means I have notes on a piece of paper. So it's not that I'm actually reading off of this, it's just that I can't for the life of me remember what comes next, and so I just have to look to double check. So it said Nicholas intro, and then it said Victor intro, and now it says general intro. Okay, so Victor and I met a couple of years ago when I worked on My Yahoo, which is another one of the Yahoo products, and we spent a little time then trying to implement a bunch of accessibility features on it because nobody had really looked at that before. And we did a lot of really great work there. And then I moved over onto the homepage team, and we kept in touch. And we always had this sort of secret agenda to make the homepage not only just updated and really cool in general, but also to include a lot of really cool accessibility features on it as well. And so we're going to start off with a little bit of background about what we've done on the homepage, and then move into the more specific demos. So as you may imagine, a lot of people are involved in building the Yahoo homepage, and there's a lot of people that do a lot of different jobs. So we have engineers, of course, but we also have the user experience designers, UED, and product managers. And if you're going to be building accessibility into a product, you really need to get buy-in from all of those groups first. Because if it's just one group trying to push the agenda, then that doesn't really work. You can't just have one person saying this is important, and then the other two people saying, but I don't understand why it's important. Why should I be spending time worrying about this? So really, getting buy-in from everybody on the team was important to get started. And so to get that buy-in and really introduce people to the idea of accessibility and what it means for the web, we took the entire team, the engineers, UED, and the product managers to the accessibility lab, where they got to meet Victor and see a bunch of really cool stuff. So go ahead.
An accessibility lab essentially is a place at Yahoo where we run people through simulations, because you really can't be a good designer or a good advocate for accessibility if you don't understand how it works. It's one thing to read some guidelines on the web, whether it's W3C or any kind of checklist. It's totally another thing to be able to feel what it means for the user to browse this or that website. So in the accessibility lab, we have a lot of technology such as single switches for people with physical disabilities, screen readers for people who are blind. There's head mouse. This is for people who are paralyzed from the neck down. I mean, you name it. We even have things like sip and puff straw, and you can use the computer by just sipping and puffing. So all of that technology is available in the lab, and we realized early in the process that one of the ways to get people excited about accessibility is to get them try some of these things, some of these technologies, and get a feel for this or that website when it is being run through one of these technologies. And so Nicholas's team has gone through such a tour, and not just developers, but also designers and product managers, so that when I come up to, go up to them and say, hey guys, I got to do this or that, they don't look back at me like, accessibility? What are you talking about? I said, you all seen that, you all tried that, right? So it speaks a much more powerful, it sends a much more powerful message to the team, and the message to say, hey guys, you're doing this because this is for the end user, this is how your product affects user if it's done badly, and this is how your product affects user when it's done well.
And so one of the goals that we set forth is we didn't want to create an entirely separate accessible experience, because you see that sometimes on the web where it's like, if you're using a screen reader, click here, or for the accessible version, hit like these 5 keys and then we'll turn on all of the accessibility features. That just seems like the wrong approach. So what we wanted to do was create a page that everybody can use without doing anything, right? Because, I mean, if you went to a website and you saw something that said, if you're using a mouse, click here, you think, well, that's stupid. Why doesn't it just know that I'm using a mouse, right? But everybody doesn't use a mouse. Some people just use keyboards. So we also would have to have something, if you're using a keyboard, press here. And then if you're using a screen reader, do this. And if you're using a single switch, do this. And that just didn't make sense. We should just have a single page that everybody can use the way that they're already using the computer without doing anything, because that's the most intuitive way of doing it. And the thing that we constantly had to remind people, and I think that a lot of people forget, is that the web is inherently accessible, right? At its core, the web is a bunch of text and a bunch of links, and that's all. And we, as engineers, do a really good job of making the web inaccessible by the decisions that we make. And so our main goal was, let's make sure that we're not making those bad decisions. Let's make sure that we're not removing the accessibility out of the web. Let's make sure that it's there from the start. And so once everybody had that basic understanding, when we were having feature reviews for upcoming feature development, part of that becomes an accessibility review. So we're already reviewing it for performance. We're already reviewing it for, can we actually get the data? And is this a visual design that we can implement? And now we're also reviewing it for accessibility. Next page. And so from an engineering perspective, what that really meant was from the start, let's make sure that we're using semantic markup. Right? Let's not make the mistake of having div-itis and just having a bunch of non-semantic code in the page. So everything that we have in there has some sort of reason. So there's a logical heading structure. So there's a heading 1, there's a bunch of heading 2s, and then under there are heading 3s, so that there's a logical outline to the entire page. And then we make sure that anything that you might be able to click on is either a link or is a button, so that it can get focused natively and you can just tab to it and use it with a keyboard. We make sure that we're using things like the emphasis tag instead of the italics tag, a lot of lists whenever we have more than one thing that are related together, just making sure that the content is in the correct order. So if you read the page from top to bottom unstyled, everything still makes sense. And really, we just focused a lot on making sure everything was keyboard accessible. We didn't allow anything onto the page that you could do just with the mouse. Another thing that we paid particular attention to was focus management. That's actually a feature, believe it or not. The buzzing? It lets everybody know. So focus management was really important too. So as you're tabbing around the page, you notice that the focus is moving around. And so we wanted to make sure that the tab order was retained, the focus was correct, and we had to do a bunch of tricks to make that work, which we'll explain a little bit later. And then we also use this technology called ARIA. So have you people heard of ARIA? Yes? Okay, good. A lot of people. So we made a lot of use of ARIA, and we'll show you specific examples of that later on. So we're going to move into the demos, and I'm going to start with something that's really, really simple. We have tabs on the page. Right? So tabs are really exciting, really interesting. Look at the top of the page. You have like news, world, local, and finance. And so you click on that, and it changes over to the next tab. And you don't really realize it, but we rely very heavily on visuals to create that tab relationship. So you can tell that a title relates to a panel visually, right? The box just kind of ends around there, and you know by seeing it switch. And so it's kind of interesting is that how would you describe that to somebody who can't see? Like, what would you do? And so we put a little bit of effort into this and did a little bit of extra coding to make the tabs super accessible. So Victor, would you like to show them these tabs? Left, 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 left. There you go. Yep. So you're on the world tab.
You want to unmute it?
Go ahead.
So you will notice what I'm going to do is basically the expectation here is that the users who are used to the desktop paradigm, when they hear their screen readers say tab, they expect the tab panels to interact in certain ways. Those of you guys who understand or who remember like how desktop applets look like, for example, the control panel, you have this multiple page dialog boxes. Well, this is kind of the feeling we're trying to give to the user. And here, if you use a left and right arrow, you basically navigate between tabs of this news widget, right?
Use tab selected 114. Now
you notice a couple of things here spoken. First of all, you hear which tab you're on, and also the screen reader, because we coded it in a way that, not we, I mean Nicholas's team coded it in a way that ARIA specs provides. The screen reader is capable of making decisions such as it said news tab selected 104. So you'll notice if I hit right arrow,
World tab selected 214.
World tab selected 204. So the user first of all knows how many tabs we have in here, and then they also know which tab they're currently on. So if I wanted to tap into here, so I can basically tap through the world news. If I wanted to go back and look at local news, for example. I actually I can't hear very well what it's saying because it's so far away. But you can. And so you get the idea. So that's basically how it works. So you move to the tab, you select the tab that you want, and then you use the tab key to go into the actual list of news for that particular category.
And so was a mixture of using ARIA markup and also JavaScript. So I'm going to show you this here, but I'm going to turn off the screen reader. So can you guys see Firebug okay out there? Okay. So sorry, I'm going to... Okay, so the first thing notice is we have this unordered list element, and there's a role of tab list. And that's an ARIA attribute that says that this represents basically a list of tabs. And then each tab is represented by a list item with a link inside. And so you notice a couple of things here. The list item itself actually has a role of presentation, because the list item doesn't really have much use for us. So we kind of want to hide that. But the link itself has the role of tab. And the role of tab basically is what tells the browser to tell the screen reader, hey, this is actually a tab. So when it said world or local or finance, it knows that that's a tab. And then there's a few of them, and then down here we have the actual tab panels.
I just want to add that the role of presentation actually tells, this is a role that's introduced in ARIA spec to allow developers to hide certain elements from a screen reader. So when the browser actually that's parsed in ARIA sees role equals presentation, it basically takes out that particular HTML element from the accessibility API, so that screen reader doesn't even look at it basically. So to sort of clarify that.
No problem. And so with the tab panel, we have a role of tab panel. And you can see that's exactly what you would expect the tab panel to be. And we set this ARIA labeled by attribute. And that's basically the ID of the link that represents the tab for that tab panel. So it's creating a relationship between that tab panel and the tab itself so that the browser knows that these two elements are related. And then the screen reader can also know that. So as you go through it, it was actually, you might not have been able to hear it. It says something like content panel or tab panel, something along those lines, to basically create that relationship between those two elements. And so when you add those roles and you add those extra attributes in, that provides the semantics for how the tab list is going to work, but it doesn't provide the behavior. So it will identify as tabs, and then you have to go in and add a little bit of extra JavaScript to add the keyboard functionality. So we went in and added that JavaScript to handle the left and right arrow keys for that. So that is the exciting world of tabs. So tab index, good question. So let me open that back up. So what we had to do basically was, because we wanted the tab ordering to go from the tab itself into the tab panel, we had to set tab index to -1 on the other tabs. And then when you hit tab from like the local tab again, because the next thing in the tab order that isn't tab index -1 is the tab panel, it just goes there naturally. Yep. So for the anchor tags, where is the URL? That was the question. Okay, so yeah, that was a little tricky thing that we ran into dealing with different browsers and then the screen readers, was that if we kept an href on that A tag, the screen reader would announce it as a link. And then it would be weird because you'd try to execute it and it wouldn't actually navigate away. So what we end up doing is when we go through and determine, can this browser use ARIA? Yes. Okay, and then we start adding stuff up. We actually remove the link, remove the href, so that the screen reader won't get confused when it goes through and starts to read it. So I couldn't hear all of the question, but the very end was, how do you decide if it has an href or not? So basically, everything that's on the page has one. So if you're if you have JavaScript disabled, or if for some reason JavaScript doesn't end up loading, these all go to the various Yahoo properties. So news goes to news@yahoo.com. I believe that world does as well. And we always have destination links for all of those. It's just once we know that JavaScript is enabled, we know that you're going to be on the page. So we strip those out, and all of the interactions end up working better.
Yes, if you view that page in links, for example, in some really primitive text browser, then you'd see those just as regular links. Luckily these days all major browsers support ARIA, so this is really no longer a problem. But if someone uses a browser that doesn't support this particular markup, then the browser basically ignores it, and the tabs are never going to end up in Accessibility API. So these tabs are basically going to be seen just as links. And you can tab through them just like you would be tabbing through any other links on the page.
Right. Yep. So how would the user know that they can use the arrow keys? Do you want to take that one?
Well,
Victor?
yeah, I mean, as I noted earlier, we have to rely on user expectation, right? That when they hear tab, that they use left and right arrow keys to navigate between tabs. You have never seen, it's one of those issues where you sort of get into user education versus sort of Web 1.0 problem, right? Where we expect that when users go to the tab, they know that between tabs you navigate with left and right arrow keys, because this is what you do on a desktop.
Right. So it's along the same lines as, we know using a mouse if you see tabs to click on it because that's the way that we normally use tabs, even in desktop applications. And for people using screen readers, they're used to using left and right whenever tabs are around in order to switch, even in desktop applications. So we're just trying to mimic that on the web.
Yeah, in fact, just one little note on that. With screen readers, for example, when you use a desktop applications that use tab panels, there are these things called tutor messages that when beginners start using screen reader, every time they get to a control like a tab, the screen reader will say things like, to move between these tabs, use left and right arrow keys. Well, they haven't kind of transformed that to the web, so it could be confusing to someone who has never seen tabs on the web page. So there could be that confusion, but all in all, we're just relying on user expectation and user understanding of the interface.
Right, because as I said when we started, if you use tabs by clicking, cool, we want you to be able to do that. If you use it by keyboard, we want you to be able to do that too, and to not have to tell you this is the specific way that you use these specific tabs on our specific site. Yep.
Let's go.
So if you use the ARIA roles, do you still validate the page? So if you use the ARIA roles, it becomes invalid HTML. I don't care.
Users validate the pages.
Yeah, we build it for users, not for developers. Yeah, there is a custom DTT that will validate, but in my experience, validation doesn't buy you all that much. It really just matters how much the users enjoy the experience. So the next part that we're going to take a look at is search. And so I'm sure we all know that search is really important on the web. And of course, we have the search box on the home page as well. And one of the coolest inventions, I think, in search in the past few years has been the search assist. So as you type, suggestions start to come up. And so if I type my own name, I don't even show up in the first few, which is kind of depressing. But the interesting thing is that I get to see, right, as I'm typing, stuff starts to come up, and I say, okay, so I might want that Nicholas Sparks, St. Nicholas. That actually is me. The second one, yeah.
Oh, you don't want his place.
And
he didn't end up all that great. So.
Oh, that's a good point. I was thinking of Santa Claus more, but that's okay. But the interesting thing about the search assist really is that it's very visual, right? To us, it's really, really obvious that we have these suggestions there, and logically, when you see those, you think, oh yeah, I'm going to go click on that if that's actually what I want, and then you get the experience that you want. And so it would be really easy to say, you know what? The accessible version of search is just a text box with a button. So it still works without search assist, right? You can type in your query and you hit search and it'll still work. And that might be fine for some people, but it wasn't fine for us. So why should we not give this same search assist functionality to everybody? And is there anything that we can do to make it easier? And so we did add a bunch of extra stuff, and I'll let Victor show that to you. And I'm going to turn on your...
It's me again. Oops.
Just a little bit more.
You should have deleted.
Yeah, it's blank.
Okay, so I'm going to start typing. I'll just type your name, right?
Sure.
If you're not bored of it.
I love it.
Okay, good.
No search suggestion on a mail little I. No search suggestion on a mail Z. One for search suggestion on a mail little user or no arrow keys to navigate its reading name.
So basically, we have a hidden region that tells the screen reader as to what's happening to the screen suggestions panel. So when there are no search suggestions, that's the message the user hears, that there are no search suggestions. Once the search suggestions have come up on the screen, then we tell the user that, hey, there are one or more search suggestions on the screen, and you can use up and down arrow keys to navigate through them. You can either continue typing at this point, or you can just start looking at suggestions. So I just type Nick, and I want to see what's there for Nick. Let's see, just down arrow. Whoever that guy is. Whatever. Do you know any of these people? I have no idea who they are. Oh, yeah, that one I know. That one I know. Oh, that guy I know too, I think. So you get the idea. So you basically can, and again, if I start, let's see if I start. Oh, we're done. Okay. So basically, every time you hit an either a backspace or arrow keys or whatever you do, that region that Nicholas is going to talk about feeds new messages to the screen reader to say whether there are search suggestions or whether there are no search suggestions. And again, if there are, then we're giving the message to the user. You can use up and down arrow keys to navigate through that. Before Nicholas kicks in, like with code and explanations, I want to say that one of the cool things that happened with this is actually, because this homepage is translated into how many languages? What is it, 20? How many languages?
Well, we're in 18 different countries.
Right, so whenever the page is translated into another language, all these messages are translated as well. So no matter if you browse Yahoo in Spanish or in whatever other language, French, you're going to hear these messages in that particular language. Okay, now you can take it.
Okay. And so this may seem like, oh, they must be doing a lot of code in order to make that work. But actually, it's pretty simple. There we go. So we have this element here. It's just your average div, really. And what we've done is added a couple of ARIA attributes. So the first is role equals status, which is one of the roles that you can set to indicate that this particular element is a live region. And a live region is basically an area of the page that you intend to change frequently. And so the browser should tell the screen reader when content has changed. And there are a bunch of different ones. There's log, there's alert, there's status. But these have all kind of come about as the Ajax world took over, as we start to add content onto the page without actually navigating away. And so we set this to role equals status because it really is like a status message. We're just letting you know what's going on. And then the ARIA live attribute specifies exactly how you want the screen reader to interrupt you. So we have it set as polite. And polite basically says, wait until other messages have already been completed. So there are other ones. There's one that's rude, which is basically like, I'm just going to interrupt no matter what's going on. So if something else is speaking, I'm going to interrupt that message and just start talking. And that seemed like the wrong interaction. It seemed like you should really wait until anything else had finished speaking before you added that in there. And so just by adding those two attributes, that is actually what tells the browser and then the screen reader, hey, I should be keeping track of this. And then we just change the text inside using inner HTML. And as soon as that change happens, it gets announced. So it's really not all that much extra code. We just have to make sure that we're setting that status message using inner HTML at the appropriate points in time. And a little hint, what we found was since screen readers are different, just like browsers are different. And so what we found was that not all of the screen readers would pick up changes if you just put text inside of that div. So we actually had to insert a paragraph and then insert text inside of that paragraph to make sure that everybody picked that up. So the next part that we're going to look at as we leave search and get rid of our F up there is the favorites on the left-hand side. So this is the part where you can go and add, is there a question? Go ahead. So are there standard messages for what you've typed? Yes. So all of that, the VICTOR, hey Victor, all of that is handled by the screen reader itself. You don't have to do anything special for that. The only special thing that we did was add in the message, there are no search suggestions available, or there are one or more search suggestions available. Cool. Okay, so now I'll talk about the favorites. So over on the left side, you can add in whatever sites that you want, and then you get little previews. So I have over here BBC World News, and then I can open up and see a little preview about what's going on. And this is kind of cool because you can get a preview of information before you actually leave the page, figure out if you care enough to go there. World Cup, maybe there's some stuff going on there. Maybe there's too much stuff going on there because it's constantly happening.
Maybe there's nothing going on.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe there's a tie somewhere. I don't know. But really, I mean, it's a pretty cool feature. The thing that you'll notice is what makes it obvious that you can open up these quick views is the little button that appears when you move your mouse over. Right? And as I said earlier, one of our goals was let's make sure that everything is keyboard accessible. And so just because those are being opened with mouse over, it doesn't mean that you can't also open it using a screen reader. And so we made sure to make those keyboard accessible and add in a couple of extra fun things as well that I'll let Victor demo for you.
Okay. You want to turn this on? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's funny. You always go in the same direction.
What's that?
When you step away, you always like go diagonally back and then you come diagonally front.
Well, because I'm trying to not to. Yeah, that's my technique, navigation technique.
It's all you. Oh, so you're all the way at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay, let me just go back to. So basically, the navigation with keyboard is pretty simple. So we've got 2 tab stops for each of the favorites. The first tab stop gets you to. So this will actually take you to a different page where you can look at different Yahoo websites, right? And the next tab stop is going to take you to this arrow that Nicholas was talking about. I'm not sure if you guys can see it on the screen, but basically the focus moves to that arrow. And so there are 2 things that we have done. One is, first of all, it moves it to the arrow. So now you can hit Enter key, and that's actually going to expand this particular module. And number 2, we provided an off-screen text for screen readers to know what exactly you're interacting with. Because we could have just said right arrow or something like that. But that wouldn't be terribly meaningful, right? Because if you can't see the screen, you don't know that it's an arrow. As far as you're concerned, it could be a triangle. So we needed to give some meaning to that particular button, right? So I'm going to skip to something more interesting. So like BBC News, for example, if I hit Enter here, okay, so this is, I think we're going to, on that, right, for now, right? Do you want me to continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the module now has expanded, and I can actually use my screen reader shortcut keys to navigate through that module. So anyway, so you could basically go either with the tab key or with the screen reader. We have a bunch of shortcut keys like go to the next heading, go to the next link, go to the next text. You could be using all of that stuff basically. The 2 things that the team had to do is 1, drop down the module, and 2, place the focus at the top of the module. Now this is very important. I think Nicholas is going to talk about this, the focus management, because if I decided that I no longer want to view this module, let's say I'm going to shift tab to the close button. So what you notice happen now is that when the module closes, my focus is placed back on the BBC World News widget because I don't want to be tabbing from the top of the page or wherever I happen to be. I want to continue going through all my favorites in the tab order. And so the team made sure that the focus is handled when the module expands and the module collapses. Right? You want to add something to that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just what we were talking about a little bit earlier with focus management. Making sure that you always know where the focus is now and also where it should go next. Because when you can see the page, your focus is just kind of wherever your eyeball goes. But if you can't see the page, then where the focus ends up is really important. So we took a lot of care to make sure that when you close one of those apps, that the focus gets set back to the link that opened it originally. Because that way you can just keep continuing on down the list, opening up other apps, closing them, and kind of previewing. If we didn't do that, then the focus could end up, someplace completely arbitrary. Like, what if it ended up at the top of the page? What if it ended up at the bottom of the page? Like, it would completely break the flow of using the page. So managing that focus was really important. As Victor said, the two things were when we open up the app, here, I'll turn that off. We set focus to this heading here. So doing that means that as soon as you start tabbing, you're actually in the app itself. Right? You don't have to do anything else. And so when we close it and we set the focus back, you can just continue on like that. And there was also a very quick thing as you opened, I don't know if you heard or not, that basically said BBC World News is loading, to just let you know that something is actually happening now. Because if you think about it, if you can't see the screen and you hit enter on something that you expect to do something and you get no reaction, you might think, is the page broken? So we use another live region for that to just say that the application is loading, hold on a second, and then once it's there, set the focus to the heading so that it reads out, and then you're aware that you can start navigating down.
Yeah, I wanted to add also that this focusing becomes very important for users who are low vision and they may be using magnification software. So that means you may have your page increased twice, or whatever size a low vision person needs in order to be able to see the screen better. And so that means you usually see less of the stuff on the screen, right? So that means you have to scroll much more to get around. And so by handling focus, we make sure that the user, if we open the module on the right side, right, we want to make sure that the focus shifts, and therefore the magnification software will also follow that focus, and it will make sure that the user will actually be focused on that app as opposed to opening the app somewhere on the right and just user is still staring at the left side, right? And so again, when the module closes, then we handle graciously focus and put it back on where the user was before, and this way you just create a nice navigation flow.
Yeah, it's funny that the focus management is something that people don't think a lot about, but it's so important for all kinds of accessibility issues. So for screen readers, yes. For screen magnifiers, yes. Also for sighted users who just for some reason can't use a mouse. Right? If you have carpal tunnel and for any reason you just can't use a regular pointing device and you just use a keyboard all the time, keeping track of that focus is important because you can see the little shaded line around the button that has focus. And sometimes you see people put outline none to get rid of that because they think it looks ugly or some such thing. And we actually made a concerted effort to make sure that those little focus dots are always visible as you go throughout the page to make sure that visually you can tell where the focus is as well.
Yeah, so this focusing, again, just as a last point, so when you guys create your dynamic pages, oftentimes you use these modeless alerts, modeless dialog boxes that ask you, are you sure you'd like to share with me your credit card information or stuff like that, whatever, And you put OK, cancel buttons, but you put it somewhere at the top of the DOM. The focus doesn't shift to that dialog box. So the user may be hitting that link 100 times and wondering what the heck is going on, They're not aware there's a dialog. So that would be another perfect candidate for where focus needs to go, where the action goes, right? So if the dialog comes up and you're asking, OK, cancel, yes or no, whatever it is, put that focus right on one of the action buttons. This is the least you can do to make it more friendly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's something that we've done with all the dialogues that we have on the homepage too, which I'm not going to show you because they're not terribly exciting. But definitely, whenever you're popping up something to the user that is important, then you should just set focus to it. That makes it a lot easier for everybody. So the next thing that I was going to show, as promised earlier, is that you can add sites over onto the left, any ones that you want. So I'm just going to add my personal site here that everybody should be going to as soon as this talk is over. And come in here and just click add. And oops, I already had it in there. Okay.
Oh.
That's kind of silly.
I guess you're the only one who goes to that website.
Yeah, well, I had to test, and so it was important to use something that I knew. What shall I add? What have I not added yet?
Like abc.com.
Let's try that. There it goes. So we get a little message up there that says NFL has been successfully added to your page. And then if I close it, you see that the NFL has been successfully added to my page.
So I'm gonna use my one of the screen reader features, which allows me to display the list of links on the page. This is just a quicker way for me to get to the Add Favorites link. So I'm gonna pick it up, press Enter. Oh yeah, okay. Okay, so this is the edit field that says enter the URL, and then it says something about up to 255 characters. So I'm just going to put abc.com. Could be anything. Give it a name to up to 15 characters. Okay. And then I'm going to hit the add button. So this was one of those ARIA alerts where we told the user, alert, ABC has been added to your page, and then you can just go back to I am done button. I just shift tab. So now I'm on the top of my favorites. So I found my ABC, and there you have it. There's the ABC site. Oops. Sorry. Okay, now you get it off here.
Okay.
Sorry.
And so
I'm still getting used to that keyboard. I've never seen that laptop before.
And so the interesting thing, see, is that working at all? Okay. So the interesting thing about that little alert that popped up, it said alert ABC has been added to your page, is that once again, we didn't have to do much. All we had to do on that was just add an attribute of role equals alert. And then as soon as that appeared on the page, the browser says, hey, screen reader, there's this alert. And then the screen reader announces the alert. And this particular screen reader, NVDA, actually says alert followed by the actual message that's being output. And so the last bit that we're going to show you on this is you can rearrange all these links too. And so I think most of us know whenever we're talking about rearranging stuff, immediately people say, oh, we should do drag and drop because that's really cool and we should just do that for everything, everywhere, all the time. And so we have that here. You can rearrange all of your links with drag and drop. And what's funny is when we're talking about drag and drop, we don't usually stop and think, hey, that requires you to use a mouse. Like if you can't use a mouse, how do you actually drag and drop? And what do you do? And so we spent a little bit of time to think about it and spent a little bit of time talking with Victor. And we came up with something that I thought was pretty simple. So I'll let Victor demo it for you.
Me again?
Yeah. So I already have it open. Or do you want it to be closed?
Oh, you mean, you open the edit favorites thing, right? Okay. So basically what we have done here is when you enter this page, there's a heading that says, currently, unfortunately for me, I already said that to Nicholas, so he knows that, there's off-screen instructions that explain to you how to use this widget from the keyboard. And so the way this works is that you pick the widget with the space bar, then you move it with arrow keys, and then once you're done moving the widget, you press the space bar again to complete the moving. So let's say I want to move these updates. So you heard it say moving updates, and then it said section. Well, that's something from screen reader. You probably noticed another div or something. So it said moving updates. So now I'm ready to start moving my updates. So watch what's going to happen. I'm going to use my down arrow key.
Move S after ESPN, ESPN.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like move S after. No?
Yeah, so it said move after ESPN for ESPN. So it pronounces some things pretty funny. We should do the Facebook. Get it by Facebook.
So move after. Ooh. What did it do?
Did you lose the focus?
Yeah, I think it's gone somewhere. Oh, here we go. So what you notice here is that as I move up and down arrow keys, it tells me where I'm moving after, right? So that I know what's my new position. If I reach the end of the list, reached end of list, or similarly, if I went all the way up, it's going to say reach the top of list. Once I'm done moving this thing, whatever, I'll just put it here. I press spacebar. Move complete, and also you will notice that the focus is on the widget after which you moved the new, right?
Yep.
After which you moved the new, after which you moved your widget. And then you just go back to the I'm done button, and that's basically how you rearrange the widgets.
So in that way, I can rearrange them, Victor can rearrange them, and I think the interesting part about this particular feature is that not everybody has to get the exact same experience, but they have to have the exact same capabilities. That's what we've always gone with. So even though you can't drag and drop to move things around, you still want to be able to rearrange things in a way that's a little bit easier than kind of the old style HTML. You have a bunch of lists and you press up buttons and down buttons to move things. That's a little bit boring.
So if you look through ARIA spec, you will see that it does provide drag and drop roles, right? But we decided to go against that because we didn't feel like it was necessary to complicate the code, and also, it means more code we had to put in. So I think the decision we came through, why don't we just keep it as simple as we can and, not call it drag and drop, just call it move, because that's really what it is. And that's where it came from.
And there were a lot of instances like this where we, went to the ARIA spec and it said, well, we have some stuff for that, why don't you use it? And then we try it and then say, well, you know what? For an actual user, it's not providing the sort of benefit that we really want. I think this is something that we want to encourage everybody to do is just like visual design, it's really about user testing because the user doesn't care, again, if your HTML is valid, if you're using the appropriate ARIA thing, if they just can't use it, it doesn't matter. It matters much more that we know somebody can get to the functionality, use it the way that they want to, and accomplish the task that they want to. And so the very last thing, yep, go ahead. So are there standards for the various messages that we're announcing to the user?
No. So you're saying if there's any standard way to announce these messages or the format of the messages, right? I don't think there's any standard. I mean, it's a cognitive, I guess, question more than. I mean, we decided to use that format, but there's no reason why you couldn't phrase it differently.
The question was, is there any sort of localization for this thing? And so at least for us, we localize the entire page.
Yeah.
So every single thing that we have in there, including the messages that we're announcing to the user through live regions, are all handled the same way. they're all, we write them in English the first time, and then we have them translated into the various languages in which we have the Yahoo homepage.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned that before. So everything you guys heard, even those off-screen messages, they're all being localized together with the rest of the interface. So you would after Facebook or whatever, you would get it in Spanish or whatever language you happen to use, not in English.
Right. And so the last thing we're going to show you is something that's kind of fun. And again, to us, like, people come to your page because they want to do something and they want to have a good experience. And so if we're going to add a little thing in here or there to make the experience a little bit more enjoyable, we want to do that. And so we had a particular Easter egg that is on the homepage. Some people know about it, some people don't. And I'm actually going to let Victor find it for you and see if you guys can figure out where it is. If you already know, no cheating.
Let's try this.
Out of list with 6 items, clickable answers link. Web list with 5 items, clickable load. Out of list, clickable Yahoo. Clickable Yahoo overview. Link Yahoo overview.
What is this thing?
Clickable Yahoo overview.
So did you guys hear that? It said clickable Yahoo OOOO.
It was funny because when we talked about, I remember there was this whole discussion in Bugzilla about how we're supposed to, because we didn't want to just put in the alt tag, hey, this is Yahoo Yodel or whatever, because then it would be an Easter egg, right? So we just put Yahoo and a bunch of O's, and just makes it sound very funky with the screen reader because you don't exactly know what it's supposed to be. So hopefully people will find it and they're going to click like, what the hell is that,
And I mean, but that's the fun part of Easter eggs is you kind of find something and you say, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Like, what is Yahoo OOOO? I don't know, but it's clickable.
Yeah, right.
So maybe I should click it.
Yeah.
And so for those of you who don't already know, can you guess where that is on the page? Go ahead, just yell it out like nobody will get in trouble. So it's not the logo. So it's the exclamation point.
Does the focus actually move to the exclamation point?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. And so that was just the little sort of pieces that we added in. Is like, why would you even bother making the Easter egg accessible? So, well, why wouldn't you? I mean, who cares, right?
Especially it's so easy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy, and it's one of those things that if somebody finds it, they're going to go and tell it. Like, how many people are going to go and show somebody tonight when they go home? Wow, the entire audience. That's awesome. Thank you so much. You should definitely do that. But it's one of those things that just people start talking a little bit, and they tell their friends. And like the first time that we presented this, I think we heard about like 10 of them actually in the audience as people were on their laptops trying it out themselves. But I mean, that's one of the things that we really want to hammer home is it's not hard to make things accessible. It's actually a lot harder to make them not accessible, but we all do such a really good job at that we kind of have to unroll that behavior and that pattern. And so you can make the little things accessible, you can make the big things accessible, and it actually doesn't cause you all that much more work. A lot of times you'll find like on sites, and we even sometimes hear it, when we have these little meetups like this, is people say, well, I really wish that I could make it accessible, but we just don't have the time. Like, we have to get stuff out there. Well, it doesn't take you any more time to write semantic markup than it does to write non-semantic markup. And it really doesn't take you a ton of time to add in a little role equals alert onto your page. The one that probably took us the most time was the drag and drop thing. But even that was just, it wasn't real, work time. It was conversation time. It was, how do we think that this interaction should work the best for the people that'll be using it? And so I think that's one of the lessons that we learned is if you consider accessibility from the start, just like you consider performance, just like you consider internationalization, then you end up just building a better product in general. More people can use it, and you don't end up needing to answer questions like, hey, how come when I come there and I can't use the mouse, I can't use your search? Right? That's not what you want. And by the way, we're also not saying that everything that we've done is perfect. And I don't think that anybody could stand up here and say that. Just like any user experience, we're still going to continue to experiment. We're still going to continue to evolve it. We're still going to continue to change things if we think that they're not working correctly. I think user experience in general is just like that. Right? Is that you're never done. You need to keep testing. You need to keep figuring out if you can do things better. On any given day, people are still having conversations about, how can we make things easier to use? Does it still make sense to keep things like this, given the changes that we've been through? And I think if we can build accessibility into a page that's as complex and widely used as the Yahoo homepage, then a lot of smaller sites, really don't have an excuse. You should just do it.
Yeah, I wanted to add one more thing, Nicholas, to what you were saying, is that a lot of this widgets Nicholas is talking about, like tab panels, and really, the guys wrote, one tab panel, right? Mm-hmm. And then you keep reusing it wherever it's appropriate. So again, the user, once they've seen this tab panel once and they tried it out and they see how it works, pretty much anywhere on the Yahoo homepage where that tab panel is being used, like if you look at our Twitter app or pretty much any app that's on the homepage, many of them do use these tab panels. And because these are the same tab panels, users will already expect certain behavior from that tab panel. So we're not trying to implement tab panel for every single instance. These guys put one tab panel that works, and then it's just being reused all over and over and over again.
Yep. Want to add any other final words before we go?
No, I think that's pretty much all. Just give it a shot, guys. Try it out. I just a couple of sort of shameless plugs, and that is that the apps themselves are also built. Many of the apps are built around the same template. So, for example, when you look at the Twitter app, we actually made it more accessible than the Twitter itself, which is kind of cool. I call it sort of accessibility 2.0, where you can take the data and you can build markup around that stuff, and you can actually do some pretty cool stuff, even enhancing the original design of the website. And I think Dennis, who's going to come up after us, is going to talk about one such project as well. So stay tuned, and thanks so much for listening to us. And any questions?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.